podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello and welcome to The Paddock and the Pavilion. Today's guest is Craig Witheford of Witheford Equine. Based at Westcourt Stables in Wiltshire, Craig and his dad Gary are the go-to training team if you have a racehorse with behavioural problems or issues. Craig talked about his love of horses, his work on race days with the starting stalls, and the growing importance of barrier trials. He's a real-life Dr Dolittle, and I hope you enjoy episode 28. Hello, Craig. Welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion.
No, thanks for having me.
And how are you?
Under current circumstances and the current lockdown and things like that, and just having a baby. Well, not myself, but my partner having a baby. I'm actually pretty good, actually. Thank you very much.
Oh, you must be tired if your wife's just had a baby. So.
Wow, I'm very fortunate. I've got a baby that sleeps through the night. I actually have to wake her up at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm very blessed to say that.
It's a good start to 2021 anyway. So congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she was born September last year, so right in the middle of proper lockdown baby. So, but no, couldn't be more pleased.
That's not her name, Lockdown, though. Yeah.
Not yet. It's funny you should say that. I went to a few yards actually recently, and you go past the odd name card and you see names of horses saying Lockdown this, COVID this, and things like that. So I think we'll see a lot of horse names after this current climate anyway.
But your baby's name is?
It's Ivy.
Ivy. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a popular name these days.
It is. Don't say that.
Anyway, well, thanks very much for being on the podcast today. I won't call you the horse whisperer's son because even Gary doesn't like being called that. So he always answers something else. But
horseman. We're horseman.
That's it. Yeah. Now, on today's show, I'm going to talk about your life with horses, what Witheford Equine do, especially talk about the barrier trials and when you go to the races.
Yeah.
But to start with, I'd just like to go back to when you first got involved with horses. Was it your dad, or were you naturally attracted to horses?
Believe it or not, I mean, at the age of 9 was the age. I mean, Dad was never a person who wanted to push me into doing it, and vice versa. I'm a great believer. If someone wants to do something, they have to go off their own will to want to do it. And it was about the age of 9, I think I turned around to Dad, and sort of the first time I sort of said to him that I wanted my own pony. And he said, well, look, you've never ridden before. If you want to ride, you know where the horses are, go and do it. So, at the time then we had an old hack thoroughbred called Barty, actually, that basically I had to learn how to put a head collar on a 16-2 ex-racehorse by my own and bring him in from the field, tack him up on myself and get on him on myself. So I was never pushed into doing it. So it was at the age of 9 when I decided I wanted to be involved. I then actually I was breaking in my own ponies, believe it or not, by the time I was 10 years old. And then I actually had a bad accident when I was about just turning 12, I think. And I think it was at that time when I went home to my mum and I had no front teeth and a squinted nose that my mum turned around and said, you shouldn't be doing this. So, I never turned my back on it. I always worked every weekend and every school holiday I possibly could, at Dad's yard and, working alongside, watching. I mean, I learned a lot more by watching than actually the hands-on side of things. And then I turned 15. I was very good sort of with my hands making things with wood, and that was predominantly what I wanted to go down to. And anyway, I was in study leave, just about to go to do my GCSEs, and we had a horse here that was come to us that was unrideable, and I watched a lad actually riding it. It dropped him a few times, and I looked at Dad and I said, you know what, I want to ride that tomorrow. Bearing in mind I hadn't ridden since I was 12. Up until I was 15. And anyway, he was shocked at the fact that, I turned around and said, I want to get on this. Anyway, the next morning came, I got on it. the horse did its, the problems that it came in to do. And I sat what he was doing, the bucks, the rears, the whip rounds and things like that. And I actually got off the horse smiling, knowing, this is the route I wanted to go down. So quite fortunate, by now I probably would be, building houses and fitting doors and all sorts. Had I not witnessed, the buzz of actually, well, not so much the buzz, it was the fact of the satisfaction of being able to sort these problem horses out, which I got at, like I say, at the age of 15, which made me, want to give up on. I actually cancelled the college course that I already had planned to do, and I left school on, I think it was on a Thursday. I think that I had my last exam. I started working on the Friday as soon as I had, done my last exam. So I never looked back ever since.
Oh, right. Well, it's interesting to think that you might. I just assume you just follow Dad in the business. No.
Yeah, of course. Dad's obviously been a massive help. He's had the difficult times. He's had the having to prove to people that his methods work. He's had to, racing is a very fickle's probably the wrong word, but a very difficult industry to go in at a different angle to what people have used to, over the last decades of years of, breaking horses in, or as we call, we prefer to call them starting, but, or dealing with these problems. So he had the knockbacks, the people, saying, disagreeing with his methods and things like that. Whereas, of course, I've always come along where he's done the hard work as such, and I've just
he's already established,
and follow it, in his footsteps. But at the same time, you've got a guy of Dad who's got 40 years of experience, and then you've got this 16-year-old kid coming in trying to tell people that I can do it better than you, basically. And these are fully fledged adults that have been doing it a lot longer than me. It was the hardest thing for me was to get the people to trust me at such a young age and get them to to believe, not necessarily compare me to Dad, but just treat me as someone new into the game, and not just he's there because of his dad and things like that. So that was the hardest thing, to get the people to trust that I was able to do the job.
Now you're known as the duo to go to when you've got a problem with a horse and issues with horses. What are the variety of issues and problems that you have to deal with?
On a day-to-day basis, if I went back to, like I say, when I first started, and within the racing industry, we wasn't that big. Predominantly, we were having your Joe Public horses, your biters, your kickers, your buckers, your nappers, and it could be anything from we've had Shetland ponies in, first ponies into, Frisians to Shire horses that are pulling carts. We had a very wide selection of horses of that calibre, but then in amongst those, you had the odd, horse of a trainer. Actually was here today, Eric Wheeler, who's obviously retired now, and Dad worked his apprenticeship with Eric Wheeler through Stan Meller, and he sent the odd racehorse to us to sort out for the stools problems. And after you did one, and we're not a company that wants to advertise, throw everything into advertising. At the end of the day, we go there, do the job, and and let the horses do the talking. Once they're sorted. So after that, we then progressed to the racing industry, got a lot bigger. They're very professional people, and once they find something that works for them, they at the end of the day, we'll go into these racing yards, and they bring us in where they bring a raw horse that's not seen a set of starting stalls before, and we're teaching them from day one. Whereas 10 years ago, we were only predominantly going in there for the problem ones. So now they're using us more as let's get them in before it becomes a problem. So, which is predominantly the work that we're doing at the moment, and more so now, where we've had to not turn our back and such on the Joe Public horses, but we've had to make a decision where we've backed off of the Joe Public horses and predominantly focus more on the racing side of things, which is, you're working in numbers in racing, and like I say, it's a lot more rewarding when you see a problem horse that's never been ridden before, as in a yearling. You started this yearling in, that he's been a problem, and then in 6 months' time you're seeing him on a racetrack, winning, which is the reward that which is such a buzz for us.
You've obviously got a natural way with horses, but what are the key skills in your job?
So I think it's one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're working with horses is trying to put human thought into these animals. At the end of the day, they are a flight animal. That they're not meat eaters, they're not hunters, which is what we are. We kill to eat. We and hunt. So you can't think of those, or you can't put the human thought into them, thinking, well, at us we would do it this way, so they must do it. No, you've got to take away that thought and treat them as what they are, which is a flight animal. So I mean, we would walk. We're a great believer in pressure release. If you're asking that horse to come forward, and and that horse moves forward a stride, and you release that pressure, that horse is going to automatically learn, if I walk forward, the pressure goes away. Whereas the old-fashioned way of working horses is you've got to keep the pressure on, hold these horses. But of course, you're fighting, or not so much fighting, but you've got hold of half a ton of weight of animal. As a human being, myself at 11 and a half stone, you're not going to win. So it's about getting into their heads from a different angle and thinking, what would they do in this situation? How would they, get a confidence from, i.e. not walking into water, or not walking into a set of starting stalls or a lorry, or, so you've got to think of different ways and why, what's going to work for those. And it could be anything. I mean, we work in a specific way of loading the horse into the starting stalls or the lorry, but that specific way might not work with every single horse. They are
very individual then.
Yeah, very individual, to a point where, if you put more pressure than you would do on a piece of cotton, and that cotton snapped, some horses, that's too much pressure on them, and that's how light they can be. Whereas others, you could probably put a tractor around them and they'd take that pressure on and not fight it. Whereas, like I say, some of them, if you used a piece of cotton with them, and you've broke that piece of cotton, they will react and get angry with you because you put too much pressure on. So it's the key to us. I mean, we're very good at that. We can assess a horse within seconds of what type of horse you've got, whether it's angry, nervous, or bold, or or it needs confidence and things like that very quickly. And that's the key, where we can get results quite quickly, is because.
So you're picking up their body language a bit like they are with a human being.
Of course, yeah, which is no different than a lead mare in a herd would do if a new horse is coming into the herd. If this horse comes in all boisterous and grows a hand all of a sudden, they're not going to want that horse into that herd, because they're going to, at the end of the day, they're going to take off the lead mare, or they're going to challenge the lead mare. So that that's why horses would come in more relaxed and not so boisterous and things like that.
But you must, as a person, have to remain calm and relaxed yourself.
Of course. I mean, if you're riding a horse and you're worried about it, they're not silly. They know, and you could, if you always know, I deal with a lot of yearlings and have legged up a lot of people in my time, and most people within racing will know when you've got someone who's worried about riding a horse, because they've all of a sudden, or a certain specific horse as such, because you put them on a quiet one and all of a sudden they've got so much spring in their leg and they're swinging their legs on and the leg up, but then you've putting them on one that's a bit quirky, and all of a sudden they feel like they're 20 stone and they're backing off. And these horses do know. So of course you're actually creating more of a problem by putting people on these horses that are worried about it. So I'm only as good as the rider on top, in my job, and I'm very, very fortunate to have good staff. I've struggled for good staff, and Dad would say the same thing. It's not an easy thing to find, is good staff that are willing to learn. And luckily now, I've handpicked, or necessarily I don't really handpick them now. They come to me, and I've got a good team around me at the moment, which like I say, I couldn't be, we certainly couldn't be where we are now without the people around us, and which makes the job a hell of a lot easier.
Just for a bit of background at Westcourt Stables, what other services do you offer there? Because you have horses based there, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, about 18 months ago, we had to make a big decision on the fact is, my daily routine would be, some days on a Thursday morning, I'm leaving the yard at 4:30 in the morning and praying to God on the Tuesday before that I haven't got a race at Chelmsford or somewhere at 8 o'clock at night, and might well not be in the yard the whole day. So about 18 months ago, we had to make a big decision to scale the yard down, not take as many horses in, because you can't, these horses need a routine, and if you're riding a horse for 5 days of the week and you're missing the odd one here and there, you're not going to sort that problem out. So nowadays, I mean, I hand select a lot of horses now, but we could have anything. I mean, I've got, at the moment, we're just sort of finishing the back end of the yearlings after the sales that have been coming in for starting. So Marcus Tregonen's just got the last couple that need doing now. I'm still taking in, so obviously with the all-weather racing, you don't get, I mean, more so this year because of the fact that we lost 3 months last year with the maidens and things like that. You're still having a lot of maiden runners, and I'm still screening a lot through the stalls. So, predominantly I'd have the likes of the northern trainers would send their horses down that needed specific stalls problems, and I've gone down a lot of the angle of remedial work as well, so horses that have had leg injuries and needed specialist treatment to get them over that leg injury, whether it be treadmills or walker or turnout or anything like that. So, and to the point where about 3 weeks ago I had a dressage, a top dressage horse where an owner had paid good money for this horse and sent it off to be started somewhere else. And they've had problems and said, turn around and say, no good, dangerous. And, and to us, it's like, we need to give that a chance. And so we brought him in, and within one session, we were cantering him around, very relaxed and not a problem. And he wasn't easy, but again, you've got to, basically the door, although we've had to restrict the yard, the gates are always open, to give these horses the best chance we can before people, turn around and say, that these horses are too dangerous. So we need to keep an options open for those.
And you also have horses there on holidays as well in the summer and that sort of thing, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got around 95 acres here of grazing. So yeah, I mean, we'll have horses here out on holiday, horses that have just, within a racing routine that, that they've just had that one run too many and they need a comeback and need a little bit of a break. And believe it or not, I mean, it's like, yourself or anybody, you never call your anywhere else your home unless you relax yourself in it. And this place, for some reason, we're very blessed that, it is a very relaxing place. It is, every horse comes here and they do chill out. I mean, we've had horses here sent to us that don't even stay in a paddock, let alone, stand in a stable or anything like that. And they've come here and they've been absolutely perfect. But we do tend to turn them out in a herd. We do try and keep them so they're not specifically on their own. At the end of the day, these, whether they're race horses or show jumpers or dressage horses, they are, herd animals. So you have to try and keep them predominantly in. If you want a horse to let down properly, they have to be, kept in numbers where they, they can go back and sort their hierarchy out. Who's the lead mare, who's the lead, colt or gelding or whatever. So it puts horses, especially predominantly problem horses, sometimes they need to be put that peg back by a stronger horse, in a paddock as such, just to, and that helps my job then, whereas, they're coming in, the horse has done the job for us of knocking this horse back a little bit, and so that we're able to then go on and do, whether it's the riding or the stalls work with it.
Well, that's very interesting. Just changing the tack a little bit to, I know something that Gary was very keen on, and like yourself are involved in, is the barrier trials. Can you let us know what they involve and where you're doing them?
Yeah, so I mean, the barrier trials is something, that we've started doing about probably the best part of 5 years ago now. When I've predominantly stopped riding now, work a lot more on the ground, and one reason I can't really afford to get hurt now, but is we had nowhere to take these horses that were going to the races, needing 4 pushers on them and a jockey holding the tail and things like that, and we had but yet we can bring them back to the yard and they walk straight into the stalls, no problem at all. Yet, they're not silly. These horses know exactly when they can go to the races and play up, but at home they know they can't. So we always had a problem where, we didn't, at the end of the day, I don't want to be driving 65,000 miles a year, and my partner at the moment, Jake Launchbury, he doesn't want to be driving 60,000 miles a year, or vice versa to Dad. So we wanted, so we don't want to be going racing every single day with these stubborn type of horses. So predominantly the barrier trials was put on so that we could take these horses that were a problem on race days to build on their, whether it was confidence or if they were stubborn because they were, worried about something. And we can do it on between the white rails as such, and under race conditions where we can get 3 or 4 horses around them. And, up to the point now, we're up to 10 runners in each trial now. And so that helped us massively for those type of horses. And then the more you thought about it, you thought, well, look at these babies. These trainers are getting babies in that, back in November time, and they're running in April, May sort of time, but they're not allowed to take them to a track and put them in the stalls and get them to relax in that environment under race conditions. So we, now we put, predominantly have massive numbers of 2-year-olds that go there, so they're not restricted to a time as where the race is off and they're getting left behind and not going in the stalls, or they're getting worked up, being tacked up. Everything's very relaxed, and you want, at the end of the day, you want the horse to go to their first day at big school as such and come back with a smile on the face, and that's what the barrier trials do. And
you're going to, is it Lingfield, one of the courses you're going to?
Yeah, so Lingfield were the first racecourse to open their arms up and say, no, we fully want to support you. Whatever you want us to do, we'll do it. And then obviously we got to Wolverhampton 2 years ago. We got them on board, and then last year, just before the COVID and everything like this come into and lockdown, we were starting at Southall and Newcastle for the Northern trainers. So it's literally covered the whole of the UK now, which is a good, because we had the Northern trainers having to bring them all down to Lingfield to sort these problem horses out, or to educate their babies. I was at Brian Meehan's this morning, and we did 19 horses there, and he came up to me after and he said, God, you've just made those 19 horses the first time they'd ever seen the stalls look so easy. And he said, when's your next barrier trials? And I said, look, they'll start again in the second week in March. And he said, you know what? I've been training 28 years, and last year I doubled the amount of first time out winners that I've ever had in my career. So, and that last year was the first year he started to use the barrier trials with these 2-year-olds. So of course proof is there that these horses do need these barrier trials in order, not so much in order to win first time, but it just proves that it helps them mentally, physically. They come on so much more, that they're not going to, I wouldn't want to go to a racetrack, be pushed and shoved into a starting stalls and then jump out and then told to run as fast as I possibly could. The first time, I'd want to go there and come back with a smile on the face. So the next time you go, you think, right, now I know what this is about. Now I'm going to do the job, which is why we've had such success. Archie Watson's another one, and Eve Johnson Alton and even to Richard Hannon as well. You know, they've all been great supporters and had very high success with these barrier trials.
So it's all a sort of program, and a horse can do it at their own stable, then the barrier trials, and then, as you've seen, winning races. Do you think there should be more barrier trials than there are even now?
I think there has to. I wouldn't say that the likes of, you know, you likes of John Gosden's and your William Haggis's and Roger Varian's. I mean, we work closely with all of those, with all their stalls horses. They're able to train their horses almost in racing conditions at home, because they have so many babies, they have so many unraced horses, and they're able to put themselves in a situation where, you know, they can put them under similar circumstances as a racehorse. But I think predominantly for the smaller trainers that have only got ones or twos or a handful of 2-year-olds, they aren't able to put those horses into a situation like a race day. So definitely, I mean, the more that's put on can only benefit. You know, it will make the little people be able to catch up with the bigger trainers. And, you know, we work in an industry that you only need a bit of luck and you're away. And I think predominantly the barrier trials definitely help, you know, people with endless amount, whether it be a problem horse or an unraced horse, you know, go in there for confidence.
And because of the current COVID outbreak and the national lockdown, are you not allowed to do it at the moment, or?
So we were allowed. There was a lull at the start of last year, where obviously we had a first plan. We actually held one in March last year, and then we had to stop during obviously the racing lockdown for the 3 months or just over 2 months. And we were able to start again in June, the same time as racing. There was no one to say that we couldn't put them on in between, but of course we didn't want to step on anyone's toes and just say, right, we're going to put them on. You know, we wanted to make sure everything was done right. I mean, we do all the temperature checks. Everyone has to do a health questionnaire. The same, we try and keep it exactly the same as the racing industry now. I mean, the BHA were very helpful this year in that, you know, they were restricting where they wasn't allowing stalls tests to be held on a race day, whereas so of course they moved them to our barrier trials, which of course helped them. You know, so we had starters there and I think going that angle would be so much beneficial for the BHA to be able to take these horses that are a problem on the track to a race environment. You know, on a normal day to day, I will go down to the start half an hour before the first and do a stalls test with a racehorse that refused to go in or went underneath the front gates on their own half an hour before the first race. You know, 95% of horses on their own are going to stand there when their adrenaline's not pumping under race conditions. But yet at these barrier trials, we were doing stalls tests with, you know, 5 or 6 other horses around them in an environment where they were put under more pressure or similar pressure as they would do on race day. So you were actually learning more from that than you would on a normal stalls test half an hour before the first, when they're stood there on their own for 1 minute.
So are you actually doing, is there, because turf season hasn't started again, won't start again until March, are you doing some barrier trials at the moment, or?
No, so their first one this year will be in March, normally the second week in March. Predominantly, I think you push for numbers during the winter. Of course, there's not so many unraced horses, whereas in March, it's sort of 2-3 weeks before the first 2-year-old race. So you will get a lot of the real early sharp 2-year-olds going to these barrier trials in March. And of course, it wasn't, I mean, when we started this, it was off our own back. It was off our own expense, you know, to a point where we still don't charge for them now, because at the end of the day, they help us on a daily routine with the ones that are a problem on race courses. So, you know, like I say, we're not there to make money from them. We're there to, you know, to help every trainer and, you know, predominantly for the horse at the end of the day, which is why, you know, I eat dinner at night, and because of them, you know, it is predominantly we're here for the horses.
Well, it certainly must be helping, you know, the horses, the jockeys as well, when they're getting on quite, you know, young horses that can be quite sort of flighty in their first runs, and also the people who are going racing, the punters who are getting a horse that's more used to going in the stalls on race day. So good, a win-win for everyone, really.
Exactly. I mean, the next step would be that I think that we'd probably have to register on a race day that these 2-year-olds have been to a barrier trial, because at least for the public side of things, that, okay, this has been to a barrier trial. And I know for a fact that, a lot of these jockeys, if you're getting a leg up in the paddock on a, and you've got 10, 20 2-year-olds walking around the paddock, and a trainer goes up to you and he's just about to leg you up and he goes, oh, this has been to one of Witheford's barrier trials, full damn well that jockey's going to relax. He's going to know that horse has been put through the situation already, and he's going to be able to ride a race on it a lot easier than someone who, like I say, hasn't been to a barrier trial.
On the subject of race days, how often do you go to race days?
So I wouldn't miss many meetings.
Really?
Between myself and Jake and Dad, we're pretty much racing every single day. Today's actually one day that I'm not actually, to be fair, but I'm not so certain I want to go to Southall on a Tuesday evening. But no, during the summer, I mean, we would be every day. It would be relentless. You're working in the mornings at trainers' yards, or you're working at our yard, and then going on to a day meeting, and then you're going on to an evening meeting on a normal circumstances. I mean, we can't do 2 meetings at the moment, but I can send Jake to Lingfield and I can go to Nottingham in an evening. But yeah, predominantly we would cover 2 to 3 meetings a day.
And you'll be down at the start. You'll be down at the start on race days. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I say, pretty much every single day. Whether it be, I could be going to Lingfield. I mean, on Friday, I think we've got 2 meetings on Friday, and I've got 4 entered at one track and 5 at the other track, and I think 4 out of those 2 of them running the same race. And so yeah, you predominantly, but a lot of trainers now are not only booking you for their problem ones, they're booking you for their nervous ones, or not so much their fancied horses, but horses that they just don't want anything to go wrong. So they're for a trainer who's under pressure from an owner, who can't afford that horse not to go in the stall. So at least if I know, if I was an owner and said, and the trainer turned around to me and said, oh, it's okay, I've got Witheford's down at the start, you're automatically going to relax, because you're going to realise, well, we've got the best as such down there. If it goes wrong, at least we've covered every angle.
Well, hopefully they say the same when they say they've got Witheford's son down at the start as well as Witheford's dad,
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure. Well, I like to hope they have now. Now I'm getting on a bit myself now anyway.
Now, you've looked after some famous horses as well. Have you yourself looked after some famous horses?
Yeah, I think the one that we're obviously tagged to the most would be See the Stars. Myself anyway, predominantly because I was the first person to ride him away. Was a year when we just got a phone call from John Ox, actually out of the blue, to say, I want you to come over and start all my yearlings. And at this time he had all the Aga Khans. And of course, when Dad told me, it was, Jesus, John Ox, unbelievable, and so excited to, and you're packing your bag the night before to go on the ferry, and you're driving down to, it was at his farm where he had all these yearlings. And he said, it was the first time I ever met John, and I was in awe of, the fact that I was meeting John Ox myself, and a true gentleman, he is. And he basically said to Dad, how do you want to start this? And he said, well, I'll let Craig get on a couple, and then what we'll do is I'll work in one barn, and I'll go up to another barn, and we'll have a rider each, and we'll work our way through 80 yearlings. And so he said, okay. And he said to his head lad there, he said, go and get Galileo's brother. And I'm stood there thinking, oh my God, I'm going to ride this brother. Anyway, within, I think it was 12 minutes, I was on his back, cantering around this barn. And the feed, and from that moment on, you just knew he was a different type of horse to whatever I had, ridden in the past. He was just so clever, just so willing to learn, and I mean, I know one day when we used to always, his stable back window was facing the entrance to the indoor barn where we were, starting these yearlings. And every single day he'd watch these, see the stars and have his head out of this back door window, whereas everything else, wouldn't really interest him. But he was watching everything. He wanted to know what was going on. From day one, he knew he was a different type of horse. But I mean, that was a massive thing for me as a young kid to be able to say I've done that.
So did you work with him quite a lot, or was it just as a yearling you worked with him?
So we did him as a yearling, and then Dad actually had to go back after his 2-year-old career. He had to go back and work him. Obviously in Ireland they do a lot of work in stocks, whenever the vet's scoping and things like that. And he actually jumped out of a stock. So Dad had to go over there and work him to get his confidence back, for whilst being in these stocks. And then ever since that day, John, Ox said, I want you down at the start. So, Dad loaded him down at the start, to win the Jodmont at York and the Derby and the Guineas. It was a great thing to have such an involvement in. But I would get, my probably biggest name for myself is Batash. He's to me now, he's not a problem horse. He's a typical sprinter who, if he boils over before, he's going to lose his race. It's what happens to sprinters. Would I say he's a problem horse now? Definitely not. I think he's now, we've got a routine that works for him, which was predominantly, his form speaks for itself last year. But as a 2-year-old, he was a handful. He was a handful to the point you couldn't even put him on a horse walker, put him on a lorry, let alone try and get him to stand in a stall for less than 2 seconds without ending up upside down. But which is the reason why we said to, Angus Gold, look, you've got no choice but to geld this horse. Yeah. And I know it's something that gets mentioned every year, for the public say, why is he gelded? But he is a horse that had to be gelded, and he wouldn't never have reached the highs without that. But I would get the same buzz from him winning like he did last year, every race he ran in last year, as a horse. Like I had a horse called Dick Doughty Wiley and I would have probably been only 18 or something, and it was one of John Gosden, and he was 16.3, a massive, great big 3-year-old. And I remember going there, and we hadn't long done an awful lot of work with some dads. So basically, John told him what the situation. We loaded him in. He went absolutely crazy in the starting stalls. And anyway, he walked this horse in, and there was not so much wounds, but you could see injuries, what this horse had done to himself, from front legs to back legs to head to, everything. And Dad turned around to me and said, right, you're going to stand in there with him. And of course I'm going, Jesus, and it's, you wouldn't get in a lion cage that's, 20 meters square, knowing you've got somewhere to run. Yet I'm going into a set of starting stalls where their hind quarters are touching the back gates and their heads are literally up against the front, and I've got to stand in there with this. But the minute I stood in there with him, you could see his eyes soften, his whole body language softened, and to a point where when I used to go down to the start with him, and I think he won the Winter Derby at Lingfield, or definitely won the trial anyway, and placed in the Winter Derby. But the minute you put that rope, on that, through the bridle, or, a halter on him, or whatever equipment we use, you can see them soften and relax. And that's where you think, what, this is why I do the job. They get me and I get them, which is like I say, the main reason, the satisfaction you get from doing this.
I was going to say, it must give you great job satisfaction. You've just answered the question I was going to ask you. Yeah. So I can see the smile on your face. Now, what about the future for, Witheford Equine? Is Gary ever going to retire, or?
Oh, I don't know. I've always said along, ever since I was old enough to really think about the future, I've always said I don't think Dad will ever retire. But I think Dad is at an age now where his body, he's had the kicks, the bangs, the falls, and the you know, and been hurt in the past by trying to, you know, by learning these methods. I'm 34 now, and very fortunate in that he's had all the knocks, the bangs, the bruises and the cuts, and taught me a way where, touch wood, I've been able to avoid a lot of it. So I think it's his body that's going to be at the end of the day is going to tell him he has to slow down. I mean, he's slowed down a lot more on the physical side of things now. I think he believes I'm capable of running it and being able to bring the business onto another, or to continue the business in this direction. So I think his body's going to end up telling him. But I mean, at the end of the day, animals is his life, horses is his life. You know, he's always going to be around, you know. But as for where I'm going, I mean, it is I mean, like I say, racing is a massive, massive industry that you can reap rewards left, right and centre, whether it's just dealing with a young innocent horse that's never been ridden before, or to dealing with, you know, the likes of See the Stars, Batash, Equiano, and, you know, the list is endless. I think we had 23 Group 1 winners in a calendar year one year, so you're never going to lose that buzz. And so for Witheford Equine, it's something that is only going to continue to grow and grow. I'm very fortunate actually now that I think I mentioned earlier that I've got a lad called Jake Launchbury that's just come on board, and it's been a big thing and a very difficult thing to find someone who can come in under me. I should have started breeding 10, 20 years ago. That's probably what I should have done, but I've only just started now. But I've been fortunate to find someone who trainers trust, which is a big thing, and I fully believe that he's capable of doing the job alongside me, so that I'm able to not let people down and continue Witheford Equine to grow. So the where it goes now is the sky's the limit, basically. You know, so I would never turn, if someone come to me and I could see something special in them, I'd only make the business bigger in order to accommodate them people.
Well, thank you very much for that. I can tell just in your voice your love for horse racing and the horse. Thank you very much for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion, and for chatting with me this afternoon.
No problem at all. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Pad and Pav.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.